wonder if you're gonna be able to allow people in here or need to sit here. and do it. Whoa, oh, the volume, remember down on the bottom. Ooga, ooga, ooga. I think we're good.
We're gonna turn those on.
For what, 4 people?
Well, I don't know, I couldn't tell if anybody was on.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be several Zoom people.
We do have,
So do you have access to click admit for people?
I believe so. I can
Okay.
see the participants
Okay.
and I think if someone is
I just wanna make
awaiting
sure.
admittance, I think we can do that here.
Yeah, I just admitted a couple of people from this computer. Just, there we go. So we got one and then us. Okay, so,
Right. Very good,
so as long as you can see it and admit, and I don't need to sit here,
right.
you should be, as usual,
Okay.
all should be.
We'll
No.
we'll do our best.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, welcome to the public informational meeting for the Belgrade Planning Board. Yes, it is the last day of June, June 30th, 2022, and we have before us a revised or suggested amendments to the existing ordinance dealing specifically with solar stuff. So, hey, Jack, welcome. So I guess I would want to make sure people know that we can receive comments at this time. So it is a public informational meeting. If there are comments, Jack, please feel free. Looks like we have a guest who has something. I'll do my best to pay attention to raised hands in the Zoom meeting, or if there's someone here. We okay, Richard?
Think so. Double check and make sure that people can actually, I'm sure they can unmute themselves. Oh, must be able to.
I would hope so. And I can't. From here, I
You
can't.
can't do it?
Nope, I don't see
Anthony, you get that?
on mine.
You don't see the admit?
I don't see the person on the laptop. I see. There I do. To have the participants. When that person just wanted to join, not visible.
You mean a co-host?
Pardon?
Did you make him a co-host?
I just had him join the meeting.
Oh, no, you gotta make him a co-host if he's gonna do stuff like that. There you go.
Thank you. That will help.
Sorry, Peter.
That's okay.
Not my fault.
It's
I
okay.
knew that.
Yeah. It's okay. We'll get through it. Yeah. Yeah. It's exciting.
So I put posters at both post offices. Dave's store was supposed to put one out for me. What else? Christie's store,
Mhm.
and of course it's on the website.
It
And I
was.
passed the word verbally to everyone that I ran into, so,
Did it also go out with, by email, to the
yeah,
I didn't really see it on Facebook. Was it on Facebook at all?
I don't know if it was posted there.
Was this electronic sign down front? When
I
I
don't
came
know.
in, it was not working. So I don't know if it was working up until today.
No, well, I don't know. Yesterday I left early, I had some stomach issues. Nick had it the day before, passed it to me, apparently, so.
Great.
I can't respond as far as yesterday.
It's been on for like 2 days.
It has been, okay. Right, so at least the word has been out for some, so. I don't know. There's a lot to discuss, I suppose. And there's a lot of detail. I would ask if there's anybody that has any specific questions or even generic ones, to please bring them forward and see if we could address them. So. maybe the big thing to know is the goal of what we tried to do was to introduce amendments or revision to our current commercial development review ordinance to include a way to manage solar facilities. And in doing so, we did quite a study, took input from other professionals. We analyzed other ordinances that exist in the state of Maine and tried to do the best we could to introduce into our ordinance amendments that would allow for the town of Belgrade to properly, I guess, permit, if criteria were met, solar facilities. That was really the goal, and to do it is, in a way that would be defensible, so.
And I think it's important for people to know we can't not allow solar facilities. That was kind of the thing that I heard from a lot of people was, why do we have to allow it? It's like, well, it's state rule, the only thing we can do is obviously come up with an ordinance to regulate it. So we can't stop them from doing it. A lot of people have that question.
It's a good point.
Why don't we just say no?
Right. Yeah, previously, we didn't have anything to address specifically solar things. We addressed other types of businesses that were sort of unique, and that was in the ordinance. But we had nothing to cover solar stuff. So that should be known.
Wondering if the word wasn't passed along.
I'm not sure.
Jack, do you have any questions for us or any thoughts?
Well, I had a few, and the principle was, they're all based on the original submission. I just looked through the deletions. It looks like most of the original has been deleted. So my principal question was, based on prior experience with the planning board, the dimensioning of private roads, where private roads are mentioned in relation to setbacks. Seemed to me that whether the private road is defined as the center line of the road or the width of the road made a difference. I didn't see that designation here.
And was that like an access way on the facility, or is that what you're referring to?
Where private road is mentioned in the ordinance.
So relative to certain setbacks or anything like that from the road,
Well,
are we
the-
saying?
The planning board and the board of appeals made quite a distinction between indicating just a center line of the road versus the width of the road. I lost that one. I'm not trying to re-argue that. I'm just saying that I'm wondering if there should be consistency in the planning board's reference to private roads in terms of either the center line, measurements from the center line, or measurements from the width. The edges.
Yes.
I would think we'd want it from the edges, says where you drive it. Most generally on the private road is showing 10 feet difference. At most. But
I mean, I think the assumption we were making, Jack, at the time we talked about that was that it would be at the edge of the right of way, or maybe we need to make that clearer.
Right.
Clearer.
You know, if it's the edge of the right of way, you kind of have to say what the width of the road is. If it's a measurement from the center line, you don't have to do it.
Yeah, we've actually run into that problem before where private roads, camp roads, people don't know where the right of way is.
Exactly, in the case that involved his property.
yeah, we just do the edge of the road, no? The edge of the road's defined, and then it's there.
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up. I think it would be important for us to look for a consistent way to do that, if at all possible.
Whatever you decide, just seem consistency is a consideration.
Right, right. Thank you.
Jack, were you looking at a certain page in there? Were you looking at a certain page in this proposed ordinance?
Yeah, I did, I made a note of it, and maybe it was page 8, it was 40.
But it was just talking about any of the setbacks. Private road or road.
Yep.
I mean, I guess even the road would, public road would be. We'd have to define that.
Yeah, I
too.
think you're right. Yeah, I think the comments equally valid to public road, although they're the right of way. We don't know where the right of way is, there's something wrong.
Agreed.
Yeah, so it's actually on page 11 of this document, I believe. Jack is referring. You can see there's a paragraph A there that says solar modules may not be located less than 250 feet from existing public and private road rights of way. So it doesn't actually even talk about what the road itself, but the right of way.
Yeah. So that works fine for public, but it may be problematic for some private campers.
Yeah, I would assume that a private road does not have a right of way.
No, we ran into this in shoreland zoning where a lot of times they're not quite sure where the right of way is.
I mean, obviously there are utility lines and stuff and poles and such. that are
Yeah,
put
but,
next to
you
private
know.
roads, but they may not be a right of way per se.
Right. There we use the edge of the travel way, I think, or,
I think so. I was just gonna say the same thing.
Because, you know, the right of way might be 60, 70 feet wide. Might be 30 feet wide in the old ones.
Right.
So I think we just define it, because we were shooting for the edge of the road is pretty much. So if we can kind of define that somehow, I mean. I'm not gonna push for the edge of the right of way, I mean, because that could be another 20 feet over. You know, we're going with the view. Somehow we'll just have to define the edge of the road or whatever. Private way.
Okay.
We'll use right away on the public roads and private road, the edge of the road.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion, and I think where applicable to be as consistent, I think, as possible. And so I think a good consideration for the taxpayers is if we have consistency across the ordinances, so.
I mean, like, say the road in your subdivision, I mean, obviously, you would know where the right of way for that is.
Yeah,
So, you know, we have that sort of at one end of the spectrum of private roads, well-defined and surveyed, and then we've got camp roads, some of which are, you know, they're by virtue of history as much as anything else.
yeah. So in my subdivision, what do I have? A 20-foot wide road and I have a 60-foot wide right of way.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there should be, I mean, we can talk about this at the next meeting in more depth, but, you know, whether it should be the right of way or the travel lane, depending on what's known, but I don't know how you put that in the words.
Jack,
Well, the travel way doesn't necessarily include the space needed for utilities. Whether it's a water line, all kinds of roads. Power lines, or communication.
That's right.
So, so
Doesn't necessarily include the ditching, it's necessary in some places. So the right of way is not necessarily just travel lane.
Right.
So I realize the marked up version of this is not the same as the clean version here. But this is a prior version because it doesn't include the 36-month permit applicability. So we might want to, this is the clean version, and on that, guys found.
Yeah, that on page 7, there in the middle 5,
Okay,
that's
yes,
uses right of ways for both private and public roads.
You know, either way, I'm fine. with either way.
Yeah,
I don't know if I have that version with me.
in fact, there's also on the marked up copy that I'm looking on the following page. Paragraph. Little b, Roman numeral 6. That begins where no vegetation can be grown.
Mhm.
Near the end of that sentence, it says structures are not placed closer than 15 feet to a property line or public or private road right of way. So there again,
What page is that on?
it's on the following page.
Page 8,
Paragraph, Craig is Roman numeral 6. Vegetative screen dimensions.
Yeah.
I'm just going to search this document.
Okay.
All mentions of roads.
and my thinking is, even in that spot, we were thinking about, at least the thought process was to the edge of that thing.
Where is,
The sentence that Anthony was referring to, do you see little VI? So, and then, the third line up from the bottom of that paragraph, it talks about provided that such structures are not placed closer than 15 feet to a property line or public or private road right
and
of
that's
way.
the visual.
yeah.
But
You
do
know
we
what's-
have that 80%?
You know, what's interesting about that is you could have a road, private road where 15, say we change that to the edge of the travel lane, the right of way. 15 could be 15 feet from that, in which case
Right,
you can't put a fence on somebody else's property.
right.
But they're gonna keep it on their property anyways, so that wouldn't be an issue. But I'm looking at the 80%. Where do we have that in this cleaned up version?
It's mentioned a couple different places. Correct.
So we have a 10-foot height at 80%,
Right.
correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, don't, I'm fine with-
Okay.
Yeah, so under visual screening, paragraph 7. Under standards for approval. Paragraph 7 mentions 80%. And then it's under, also under paragraph 7. Paragraph Roman numeral 3. And then Roman numeral 5 also mentions, and Roman numeral 6 also mentions. 80% consideration. And 8. All throughout that section.
So we're good and consistent there.
as far as the 10-foot height.
I just saw it.
You saw it?
So I don't know how people feel, but relative to the language about the right of way, public or private road right of way, and then the thinking about the 15 feet to the property line. Do we need clarity on that part though? Because, I mean, I understand what you're saying, Craig, you can't put a fence on someone else's land, right? But do we need clarity in the language so that you don't introduce a problem? I don't know, I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, but is that an area that we need to clean up?
I mean, the setback is in some respects easier to deal with because if you use the edge of the travel lane, that's, well defined on the face of the earth at that moment in time. And where the right of way may or may not be known, in a subdivision, it's going to be well known. Camp Road, it may not. Yeah.
Right,
So, and if, 10 years from now, they widen the Camp Road, well, it doesn't matter because it's only where the travel lane is on the date that the application is submitted. So it isn't like it's a moving target.
is there a way to possibly say, to use some language that would say to the edge of the right of way, the edge of the travel way within the right of way as it exists today, whatever that would be. Meaning, over time, if travel ways meander, because they will, some of them do, right? As long as it's still within whatever the right of way is, even if it does travel, it kind of sets it to be within a legal thing called a right of way, no matter where the travel way goes. I don't know, it's just a thought.
Kind of complicated a little more than necessary, but
Yeah.
the edge of the travel way. That's not an application.
Maybe that simple could do it. Jack,
Yeah, you might consider, the board might consider something like, language, something like, the setback is as legally, from the width of the right of way as legally, it's already legally defined. In some places it may already be defined satisfactorily. If not already defined from at least X feet, say 15 feet from the center line, from each side of the center line. of the private road.
I see. So by using language like that, wherever the private road travels, that travel way is, at that time, you'd at least have an indication of no more than 15 feet from that. Is that what you're saying?
And then some feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, I said 15 feet. That makes sense to me, but, you can pick any setback you want.
So what I understood what you just said was where there's a legally defined right of way is like in subdivisions where it's legally defined, but some of these older camp roads, if you went, so the setback would start 15 feet from the center line,
That's what I understood.
right? Is that,
Yeah, that was my
so
idea.
rather, if it's not a legally defined right of way, then you go from 15 feet from the center line, and that's where your measurements start for your setbacks.
That's what I understood him to say. I think that can work. Is it little, it's more words and, more sentences to put in. It's not huge though. And probably most important would be that it makes sense, really, Richard, to you. You know, because if you get a call and say, hey, what do they mean? You know, there's gotta be a way to say, oh, this is what it says and this is what it means. So if we're talking in circles, please let us know.
I'll just send George an email. You clarify. I understand what you're saying.
Good luck with that.
I'm following everything that's being said.
Okay,
And it makes sense so far.
all right, thank you.
Do we know with a lot of these camp roads that a right of way has just never been established in deed or even surveyed? Is that part of the issue?
I don't know. My thinking was that sometimes the answer is that we don't know.
Yeah.
Good.
Because
Right.
like your example on down on Sandy Cove, if I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, Jack, that's mentioned in the deed, but it isn't located in the deed. Is that correct?
It's not located in the deed, and I think my opinion is that the issue came up because a discharge was put in, and it couldn't have been put in if the right of way had been established in width.
Yeah.
The planning board error that did it, and the enforcement error that did it, in my opinion. Water over the dam, it's a settled issue, I'm not here to whine about it. The experience tells me that it may come up again
Mhm.
in this context, and that's why I bring up the issue here.
It's a good point. You know, we have to learn from what has happened.
Is there anything else besides the right of ways?
Well, there were a couple of grammatical things that I think are overwritten, changes.
So I haven't seen anything from anybody attending via Zoom that would be a raised hand or a chat yet. But I'm trying to keep my eye on it, so if something does come up.
Jack, I don't know if you picked up on this or not, but you know, the visual impact is something that we really spent a lot of time and energy on. And in fact, as Peter mentioned, we had well, through Anthony's efforts, we're able to have the benefit of a landscape architecture firm that specializes in doing what the ordinance called the visual impact analysis. Part of that is you have to define places in town that are of particular importance because of the view they provide. One of the ones we've defined in here is basically the area around your home. We do it based on elevation, 550 feet. I mean, as you know, Becky's taken a gazillion pictures. That became our standard. Where do people stop at the side of the road and take pictures? Well, that's an obvious one. There's some others in town too, but I just wanted to note that for your benefit.
Well, that doesn't concern me. Number one, neither I nor my kids plan to put a major solar array.
Yeah, no, Yeah.
The place where people take pictures now is already in a conservation easement with the Seven Lakes Alliance.
yeah, no, this is more of if somebody put one over, it came to the planning board with a proposal to locate a large commercial solar array over by the Sandy Cove Road, which would be visible from that location. They would have a tough time doing it under this ordinance because it would be visible. So it's not so much about prohibiting anything in the area of your hilltop as much as it is what can be seen from that hilltop and protecting that view.
Right. And we also identified several other key areas that we thought people would go to take pictures, places that are sort of iconic about Belgrade. That if from that viewpoint, there was a potential to see one of these proposed solar facilities, that would make it very difficult to pass under this suggested revised ordinance.
The most obvious is that it largely not be visible from those portions of the lakes that are within the jurisdiction of the town of Belgrade.
It's not something that has been a concern with me or.
Yeah, I just bring it up because one of these viewpoints, which is how the terminology that's used in these visual impact analyses happens to be the hilltop that with, you know, of your land. It's mostly your land. I mean, probably in some of the Dunham's land, I guess.
If I may, who would complain about that?
Who would what?
Who would complain about that under the ordinance? Would the code enforcement officer complain about that?
It's more in the context of a criteria that the planning board has to consider when an application comes to us under the, you know, the commercial ordinance for a commercial solar facility. So it isn't so much about a complaint as it is the permitting process and what criteria do we use to make a decision, yes or no.
I haven't asked the question because I can't visualize making a complaint about what somebody else is doing with their land.
Yeah, this is,
Oh, you'd be surprised, Jack.
you won't have to, because there'll be plenty of other people in town that will, but the, yeah, no, this is the use of that as one of the many criteria in here by which the planning board has to make its decision. It's just one, you know, just like the setbacks, just like stormwater runoff, just like, you know, other measures of water pollution. It's just one of the multitude of things that they would have to demonstrate they can meet.
Yeah. And as was mentioned, there are a number of these places in Belgrade that we know people enjoy that view. And part of the thinking was that if at one of these points, whether it's Hilltop of West Road near your property or some of the other places listed, if that view was impacted by a proposed installation, that would be one of those things where it would work against the applicant, I would say, in this case. Okay. So just for everybody's awareness, there's a chat here where Kathy Stevens asks, will a copy of this ordinance be available for viewing? And will this go to voters in November? So I can answer that both verbally and I can also type it back to the person asking, but the answer would be yes, it's viewable. It was posted on the town's website today, so that was good, right? And then the idea is to present this to the voters, have it ready for the voters in November. That's what we're working towards. So I'll make sure to mention that in the chat.
Might also want to mention that, you know, the next step in the process is, and it'll also be a public forum, will be for review and discussion by the select board, because they have to sign off on this for it to even make it to the voters.
Well, and of course, if you decide to incorporate any of the changes discussed here tonight, rights of way, setbacks from roads, You'll do that at planning board, at your next planning board meeting. And then send it to the select board.
Right.
Select board will send it to the town attorney for his review, come back to the select board for final approval, public hearing.
Right.
And it's on its way.
The voters get their final say.
Jack, any other concerns you might have or any words of wisdom about what we've done so far?
Well, what, you're sitting here thinking about it, you're talking about the view. I'm personally much more concerned right now with the size of the piles of waste wood, brush at the transfer station. Because as the summer comes and things dry out, late in the summer and fall, with a strong southwest wind, one can pull fire down there, would burn uphill and take the whole hillside off, including our house and a lot of other houses. So I do have a little concern about that.
This is relative to the cutting operation that was on that hillside.
Relative to Iowa, what fire that started at the
Oh, okay, I see.
transfer station and those piles, there'd be no stopping it.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I misunderstood.
Because basically that stored wood and brush that's piled there acts as a fuel for what could be
Yeah.
an intense fire.
There'd be a lot of flying ambush.
Yes.
That's what happened at War Harbor in 1947.
Did it start as a dump fire? I did not
Yeah.
realize that.
So the legislature's reaction to that was required all dumps in the state of Maine to be within 300 feet of, to be on a stream. And then when environmental pollution laws came, it required them to be farther back.
So for everybody's awareness, there's a chat here and Kathy says, my main concern is, and as many is the environment of the lakes. Clear cutting of this many acres near the lakes on a hillside with runoff to the lakes is disturbing and very concerning to Belgrade. Thank you, Kathy. So I'm interpreting that comment to be relative to proposed solar facilities that would include some sort of cutting. I'm thinking what the comment has to do about. So
In our proposed ordinance, we haven't limited to 10 acres
of cutting.
of clear cutting.
And that's a good point too. And so Kathy, you may have heard that in the revised ordinance that we would like to propose to the town of Belgrade is that we've limited the amount of clear cutting for such a type of facility to 10 acres, not more than 10 acres. Right, up to. I hope that helps. So, and she mentions solar array Burton Woods project. Wonderful, thank you, you're welcome. And of course, I'm not sure where the Burton Woods project is in terms of going through a process at DEP and whatever, but we haven't even received it yet. As a town, we have not received that, right? So
Well, at the moment, we couldn't do it, we can't receive it because of the moratorium.
indeed. So, and so if we were to receive it, it would be after there's a vote.
Right. But by the time it all goes well, or according to plan, this will be hopefully approved by the voters in advance of us ever receiving another application.
So I'm gonna jot it down in this case.
Jack, the only solar farm that's been approved in Belgrade under this ordinance, under the current language, which doesn't include anything specific for solar, is Steve Bucksbaum's on 135.
Which one is that?
Steve Bucksbaum's
Oh, okay.
solar fields, if
Yeah.
you're aware of that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a relatively modest size one. It's like 20 or 25 acres.
There's no go ahead and proceed on there, is there?
He's waiting, he's still negotiating with CMP over a contract and there's a lot of institutional hurdles. Planning board approval is just one of many.
Does a solar farm have to be on three-phase power or single-phase power?
Three-phase.
Three.
Should that be mentioned in this?
Well, there's three-phase pretty much quite available now in Belgrade.
Yeah, I mean, we can't really regulate that. I mean, if CMP decides they want to put three-phase in.
Yeah. Or if somebody's willing to pay to connect from like 135 to 27, that's, that's up to them.
Yeah.
The three-phase power is going to be needed for the public drinking water supply system too.
We
Pump
do,
stations need that.
Well, there's three-phase power on Route 27.
yes. But we do have verbiage in there about being inspected by a state electrical licensed state electricians and stuff like that. So as far as what's on site, we do have verbiage in there about it. When it reaches the road. Power line.
It's really an investment issue for them. How much money are they willing to sink into it?
I only asked the question because we were talking about, in theory anyway, a visual solar farm from our place. I can't think of any place where there is three-phase power.
Not over there, no.
Sort
Right,
Right.
yeah, no,
of.
they
Could
would
they
have,
do it with an inverter?
I'm sorry,
Could they do it with an inverter?
they typically do have inverters, but I think they still need three-phase, don't they, Craig?
Because there's an inverter at the transfer station
Right, yeah,
to run the three-phase power to the rail.
yeah. My understanding, and actually this is from Steve Bucksbaum himself, that they need to have three-phase power.
Kathy also asked about stormwater runoff.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that.
I think she's going. So is that being developed in the commercial development?
That's already in the ordinance.
Right,
It
that's what I'm
is.
saying, it's being developed in the commercial development review ordinance.
It currently exists as right.
Right, so therefore, this would have applicability.
Right, yeah, I was just verifying.
Yeah.
Did remember she mentioned. And I was a lot of concern about that hill, and
Absolutely, right? That was a
Good
lot of,
reason.
right, a lot of people express concern. I know we've had some discussions about it here, what it means for a project like that or others, right? Yeah.
So what's the rules of mess, if there's no participants?
You can just close the meeting. You're not obligated to stay for the meeting.
Which will be very helpful. My recommendation is that if no one else shows up in the next few minutes, we close at 7. But I would like to give people that opportunity because we did advertise it, right? We did advertise. So there is a possibility people are just late to roll in.
Well, it is before the 4th of July weekend and all that. So,
Yeah. good point.
So people are
but we didn't have much choice in the matter given our timeline.
right. Yeah. I know. Want to get some shut eye, right, if possible. I hear you.
I'm guessing the whole issue about the private road right away hasn't been dealt with by other towns because they don't, their setbacks don't apply to private roads, it's just public roads. Because you would think Reedfield, Naples, towns like that would have encountered similar situations.
Kind of like what Jack said, though, established right away, legal right away, or would pick a distance from the side.
I'm guessing some of those other towns that do have private roads. Maybe there have not been instances yet to test the wording in their or the language that's in their current ordinance. Because they may find that they are in a conundrum, they have a conundrum, a problem.
Yeah, I mean, just not be aware of
May not be aware of it yet.
it. Yeah.
Until such time something happens. Then, someone sharp would look at it and say, hey, got a problem here. So if no one else shows up and there are no other comments, I propose that we wrap up this meeting at 7.
Before we do so, I just have a question for Richard.
Yeah.
Richard, so I get the impression that maybe people have come to talk to you about this or did so while you're posting the notices and
People talk to me like on the site,
when you're out in the
on the
field.
site evaluation, stuff
Yeah.
like that, but. I mean, it hasn't come across as a grave concern, it's just that the people that did bring it up show grave. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And so I haven't been bombarded with questions or emails or anything like that. But the people that talked to me about it did have a big concern. Nobody was really interested in having it at all from the people I talked to. Yeah, it's my experience.
I was just curious what else you might have heard. Thanks.
I mean, in general, everybody said, we don't want that.
Yeah.
We don't want you cutting all the trees there.
So I'm anticipating we'll be able to wrap this up at 7. Our next step though is if we have, because we have a couple comments, right? that we can make those revisions at our next planning board meeting, right? So Richard, are we set to do that on next Thursday, the
Seventh.
7th?
Okay, so you want me to revise the agenda?
Please,
Because I already sent it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. yes, and I think I responded and said I. no, I was-
You got it, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was just checking, I don't know why, but there was 2 different planning board just selected my email, and one of them just didn't have everybody's email.
Can one of them, and I can help you do that if you don't know how.
All right.
I'll show you.
Well, now I know which one it is, so.
Yeah. I can show you on your computer, we can just, because it caches everything.
Right.
So we want to get rid of the bad one, the one that we
Right.
don't want to apply. That way you don't even have it as an option, start typing in planning board.
Right. Yeah, yeah, when I do that, tool will come up.
Right, we're gonna get rid of one.
Do we need to set aside a whole hour, or do you think we could do this in a half hour? Half hour? I would think.
I think so, yeah, 30 minutes.
I agree with that.
I think we can tackle it well.
We have two. I was hoping to get more elaboration out of Rich as far as those steps. that we talked about. One of the applications is for stairs going down to the water for safety and erosion control. And Rich said that it's a bit more involved than just submitting that application, so I'm not sure, of course, he was busy flying, whatnot, but I don't know if he was referring to a permit by rule from DP, or there was some other steps that had to be taken, so
Hmm.
I wanted to get with the applicant, let him know what that was, but obviously, Rich is high up. right now, so
Okay,
hopefully
All right.
next week.
thanks. So next week when we meet, we'll be able to hopefully take these comments and introduce an acceptable revision to those, the wording we already have. And then we submit that, Anthony, I guess, if you would then take that and then run it to the.
So what will happen is when that meeting is over with, I'll incorporate the changes into the working document. I will, George, make sure that a lot of this is just new to the ordinance, but some of it will be involved changes to existing
Right,
sections. I'll make sure that is presented in such a way that it's clear that the changes.
what the edits are and
Correct,
what's new.
Okay,
correct. And have that for you guys to take to the select board. Let's see, I guess their first meeting would be not the following Tuesday, but Tuesday after.
July 21st.
Yeah.
okay.
So,
21st.
So,
oh,
um,
yeah, it wouldn't be.
19, I think.
Yeah, 19th then. I was just going by that.
So someone will want to craft a background memo to the select board, just out hitting the high points of what the ordinance does.
Okay.
For the select board packet. I would suspect, because they've been kept in the loop during this entire process, that they will approve your work, sending it to the town attorney, and then he'll get it and do his work. And so when it's submitted to the town attorney, he'll just need to know, hey, we're under this deadline. to
Yeah.
Get it done. And I don't anticipate he'll have any problem doing that, because Golly made it through the subdivision ordinance in about 2 days, and that was a 100-page document.
Anthony, the portion, the decommissioning language for telecommunication towers and wind towers, that'll be part of this packet too, right?
Yes. Now, I have not worked on that because I did not get those documents that you had produced, George, that was discussed at the, so I don't have any access to that information. So someone else is gonna have to make sure that that's added to this, once I turn this over to you guys.
Okay. All right, so that's on us.
How do we get that?
Well, I mean, if it's just a matter of you sending it to me, then I'll add it to this.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
didn't have any access to the documents that were distributed here, so I didn't know.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah, because what I sent you was the one on wind was just pen scratches on a copy of
Yeah.
the KD cog language
Oh, I
that we were
gotcha.
given.
Yeah, so what you guys talked about at your last meeting, I never got a copy of
Yeah.
that, so I was lost.
Okay, so we need,
Where did that come from?
I thought that came from you. Did you not distribute something to the board?
Was that
Well-
from the memo that George wrote from like?
Yeah, but that was just comments on what we were given to look at in the packet.
Yeah, because Anthony actually asked me to, if you passed anything out, to give him a copy, and you didn't pass anything out last meeting, so I obviously had nothing to forward.
Yeah.
I think that came up, it was like on the fly, wasn't it? Kind of.
Yeah, no, it was.
Yeah, we
It was entirely new.
Yeah, we just kind of took a right turn and went into that, and I don't think that there was actually any sort of documentation. Like you said, pen scratch.
Maybe that helps then.
If
Just
someone
for the-
Someone can get me what the changes are that the board wants, I can incorporate it to this document, I just don't have that.
Yeah. Can't even remember now what I. Because I have the telecommunications amendments. In electronic form. Because we had that because of the work I did previously on what we and had made comments to it. And you already have that, because I emailed that to you, but
When did you do that, George?
what's that?
When did you do that? Do you remember?
Sunday, maybe? Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. I mean, I could easily send it again. What I haven't done, what I don't have an electronic version of is the wind energy decommissioning. I suppose if worst came to worst, I could just type that up. And then, because we only made a couple of changes, a couple of minor changes to that. Most of the changes were to the telecommunication tower decommissioning.
Right.
So Anthony, I'll resend the telecommunication tower piece to you when I get home.
Okay,
And I'll work on the wind energy one, Peter. And send that to Anthony,
All right.
one way or the other.
Thank you, George. I'm glad we talked about this because I didn't realize, Anthony, you didn't have all that you needed. And it will be important if we're gonna get the whole package, right, to the select board, and then eventually the town's attorney. So. Thank you, George.
Yep.
Thanks, Anthony.
yeah. Yeah, I'm seeing this now.
Does that help?
That's chicken scratching was hen scratching is
Appropriate.
appropriate.
Did-
So it looks like in the end, you made some changes, George, but then you just scratched this whole portion out about the decommissioning of the telecommunications towers.
Well, at the end, there's a whole section on solar array decommissioning, which we've already incorporated into the other portion.
Right.
That's what I, at least, yeah.
I guess I'm just confused as to.
Oh, well, that's, so I think I sent you two separate documents, right? Emailed you two separate documents. The
Yeah,
one,
oh, I see. There's room for telecommunications.
one is, yeah, so, and that's why I scratched out in the other one, the
I see.
telecommunications.
So take telecommunications.
So what I owe,
Take telecommunications from the first document, wind farm stuff from the second document.
Right, so what I need to do yet is to redo the one for wind energy.
Okay,
As long as you have the telecommunication tower piece.
yes, yes. And then there's something here for site assessment too. On environmental site assessment. But I think that was incorporated in the last version that I sent, because I didn't have that.
Yes, it
Yes.
was.
Yeah, that was passed out, it wasn't distributed to me, so it took me forever to transcribe, go back. That done, so. Someone owes me a beer.
I do. At least one. I'll be happy to buy it for you. All right, so going ahead, so we have our job on the 7th, looking ahead to presenting to the select board on the 19th, correct? And if all goes well, it goes to the town's attorney. Hopefully it passes muster then select board schedules a public hearing. And then we go down the road for regular stuff. Jack,
Just a question, when is the next revision of the comprehensive plan for Belgrade?
ooh,
It's every 10 years, isn't it?
2024.
So it's just 2 years off. Is somebody involved? Is that an active group now, comprehensive plan group?
It is, but it has shed some members recently.
It seems to me that this topic is one that is really important, and I recognize and thank the board for taking on and doing what's been done. But it seems to me this is a topic for the comprehensive planning group too, because it's going to change the face of the town of Belgrade.
absolutely,
over time.
yes. Agreed, very much agreed.
So
Well-
I was just wondering about the linkage between the comprehensive plan work and the work that you do.
And it may and may not, Jack. I think with the ordinances that this board has studied, I think it's fair to say that Belgrade will have the strictest regulations regarding solar farms in the state. And it's not going to surprise me at all if our ordinance doesn't become a template for other communities, particularly in the Belgrade Lakes watershed.
And then
I was
relative,
just thinking about what the comp plan should say about this subject.
yeah, that's a good point. And years ago, when the comprehensive plan committee was working on it, back in 2013, I guess it was, when we did that, passed in 14. There was no consideration of solar at that time.
That's right.
So now it's an additional item that should be at least commented on and brought to that committee, even though if that committee is morphing a little bit, maybe in terms of membership. It's a good point. I don't see any other questions from anybody who's attended via Zoom. Jack, do you have any other questions for us? All set. You're very, very welcome. Richard, anything else for us?
Nothing else.
Planning board members, anything else that we need to
Just
discuss?
thank you, Jack, for showing up.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Really do.
Do we get paid for the image of the audience?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
I think so. So I appreciate that. I move that we close the public informational meeting, or, yeah, public
Yeah.
informational meeting for June 30th, 2022. So do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Craig? Yes. George?
Yes.
Me too. All in favor? We're done. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.